Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs, I'm listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
There is something nice if you have the money and the resources to have a stateside VA and they just get everything taken care of for you. And it's quicker.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
You're listening to the Moved by Purpose podcast with Stephanie O'Brien, and today I am so pumped to talk about a topic that is just really something I'm passionate about that not enough people do. And this conversation is with Matthew Casteel, who is an expert on delegating and outsourcing to virtual assistants. He has built a successful company with virtual assistant services and is an incredible guy. So without any delay, let's get right on to the interview. Welcome to the show, Matthew. I am so pumped to have you on today.
Well, Stephanie, it is my great pleasure to be here for sure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So the first question I ask every guest is for you to let us get to know you a little bit better. Give us background of what led you to starting your business.
All right, yeah, well, my name's Matthew, and I blog, hang out over at holyoatmeal.com. So if you want to see what I'm up to over there. I basically have been working with overseas VAs for a while, and kind of my business has emerged from that. I now serve as a VA myself for some pretty high-end clients, some exclusive VIP clients where we do some really cool work with their platform building. But I've always had and been working with teams overseas. Part of the thing that I'm passionate about is learning how to live a life with more meaning, margin, and more money. That's, I think, what we're all after, right? And so Holy Oatmeal is just kind of a fun place where I talk about those. I look for ways, how do we live a life with more meaning? What are we doing? What matters most? Are we spending our time on what matters most? How do we build margins so we can live a life with more meaning? Sometimes we get so filled with stuff that we forget to build that space in our lives. So how do we do that? And then, of course, none of that matters if we can't pay the bills and we can't buy groceries. And so we need to figure out how do we get more money in our lives. And so for me, a lot of that circled around outsourcing and delegating and finding out, wow, you can actually have people help you and you can do it in a way that's affordable and ethical and fun and really a cool experience. And so my business over the last few years has evolved from different versions of that. I started out just helping people find other VAs, and then we put together some products. And in fact, I think I helped you with some of that stuff at one point where we're just helping people do their social media and blog prep. And, it's evolved to, like I said, now I've got a few high-end VIP clients that I help personally with our team, which that's been a lot of fun because you kind of get a little bit into a lot of the back-end details of their entire platform building strategy, which has been a lot of fun. And then, again, helping people now with some products. And you and I were talking about, I'm going to be launching this year my VA to Z product, where we basically go through, how do you find your own VA? How do you work with a VA overseas? What are the pros, cons? And we get out of that, it's going to be like a mastermind group where we take 10 or 12 people through it together for a limited amount of time. And at the end of it, everyone can go forward and really have a good strategy and their own VA. And so I'm pretty excited about that and been working on that on the back end. So that's kind of what I've got going on. My life's crazy. We've got 8 kids and my wife homeschools. I work out of the home. So for me, delegation became a very important part of my life. This is all birthed out of real need, figure out how to be able to be a dad and pay for all these kids. For the last 16 years, we've had boxes of diapers in our house and we buy 6 gallons of milk a week.
Oh my God.
Figuring this stuff out was necessity for me. And so I'm just sharing my journey, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's succeeded and what's failed. And so that's what I'm all about. So hence the name Holy Oatmeal. Life is holy and sacred and wonderful, but it's a mess at the same time. So that's kind of where those worlds collide.
And I love it. So if we should really listen to anyone about delegation, it definitely is you. You're a credible source.
Yes, yes, exactly. Better or worse, I have learned to delegate. In fact, one of my favorite delegation resources, teenagers now. So I don't think I've mowed the lawn like in a couple of years. That has been my most successful delegation. So
yes.
And it's free.
Yes. So the reason, apart from just meeting you and knowing you're a fantastic person and you just have a great heart for who you serve and what you do, I also I noticed in my work with clients and just networking with other business owners, how many people are just burned out. They just try to do way too much. Yeah. And especially like most of the people that listen to my podcast or just follow me, they are working full time, trying to build a business around their day job, which is super hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but people don't necessarily, they don't know what their options are.
Yeah.
Or they automatically think they can't afford it.
Yep.
The scripts or lies they tell themselves or start believing, which were things I believed were, I can't afford it. I can't trust anybody.
It's too big of a hassle to even try to do it.
Yeah, I can do it better myself. It's going to take too much time trying to find somebody and then teach them and manage them.
Yeah.
So I first want to talk about the first kind of objection or thing that hold people back from delegating in the first place is where to find them.
Yeah.
How can you find help?
Yeah. Well, the objections are definitely birthed out of people's real world experiences. So we know that some of that is fear. Some of it's real fear, but they haven't worked past the fear to like, okay, there still is a solution. Just because, like, if you do something 3 or 4 times and it's hard, you will give up. But that doesn't mean it still can't be done. And so I encourage people, even if they've had bad experiences, like, press in. It is so worth it because you open up a whole nother level of opportunity in your life. And now there's a couple different ways to approach it. Obviously, there's a lot of great resources. I know, if you follow Michael Hyatt, of course, he talks about his VA team and the different stateside, like some of the VAs that he has here in the U.S. that he uses. And that is a great solution, but it's also a much more expensive solution. But if you know exactly what you need to get done and you're ready and you're, like a Michael Hyatt, he's a very together guy. At least that's, maybe like we were talking before.
That's how he presents himself.
At least comes across as very together. And I kind of imagine he probably is. He's been at it for a while. The rest of us who are kind of a mess, right? We may not know exactly what we need to do. Yeah, the holy oatmeal lifestyle. We don't always know exactly what to do. It is true that it can be scary and overwhelming, and there's so many. We live in the day and age now where, as soon as you learn something, all of a sudden it's outdated and it's no longer an available resource, and so it can be a little frightening. Now, I guess the best way I can answer this is to tell you kind of my experience. Is I read the 4-Hour Week, years ago, and I oh my gosh, you can hire someone overseas for like a few bucks an hour? No way. Is that really true? And I thought that was kind of cool. And the way, people feel differently about Tim Ferriss, some say he's arrogant or he's just using people. All that aside, when I read that chapter in the book, it wasn't even, he didn't write it, but someone wrote an article like that outsourced life, and they had this whole thing in there about how it was kind of comical where he outsourced everything he possibly could. I had read so many books and technically I listened to them, so I'm never sure if I should say I've read a book when I've listened to it. I'm not. I don't know if I'm a liar if I say, I read that. I've listened to it like 4 or 5 times, but at any rate, I heard that and I was like, no way. And I just decided, I'm going to actually do this because I've been reading these books or listening to these books and they have all these ideas, but I never put them into practice. So I said, what if I just went out and found a VA? So I had heard about hiring overseas and I tried like a couple different resources and it was still too expensive. And I'd heard you could do it for even cheaper. And I had zero money, like with all these kids and everything. I did not have any extra money. And so I jumped on Craigslist Philippines or Craigslist Manila, and I just made a job description. I'm a stateside business owner. At this point, I don't own anything, but I just said, hey, I'm looking for some help. And sure enough, people replied straight from Craigslist and started sending me resumes. And of course, now I've got resumes to look through. And I think at the time just made up a couple of tasks I needed, or I told them what I was doing. And really what happened is I had several people apply, but only 2 or 3 kept bothering me, like kept pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I didn't know what I needed to be done, it was actually worked in my favor, because this one gal, she actually came up with ideas, and I thought, okay, now this is my gal. And so, and sure enough, she was awesome, and I hired her. And at that point, I couldn't, I thought, no way, $2 an hour, that seemed like immoral. And so I went the high moral ground, and I paid her $4 an hour. Yeah. But I just didn't have any. I could only afford her for I thought, I only have a few bucks a week, I can do this. And I didn't it wasn't really in our budget. So this was totally kind of on the side, experiment. And so I looked for and found her. That's why I said, hey, here's some ideas. What do you think? And I just kind of let her loose. And so that was my first experience. I think since then, I don't think you can do that anymore, but I have found some other resources. And so on a real practical level, the resource I use now is called onlinejobs.ph. So onlinejobs.ph, the .ph is for Philippines. And that is you pay a monthly fee. It's $50, at least at this point, it's $50 a month. But what's cool is you can opt in and opt out. So if I'm going to go searching, if I need to search for someone, I'll pay the $50, and I figure it's worth kind of the searching. And it's just a whole online resource.
Time.
Yeah. And it's Filipinos it's from the Philippines. So they're looking for stateside, or, people all over the world can go to this site, but they rank people. You can find people with pictures and government IDs. They do a ranking system. So it does a really good job of clarifying who to work with and who to find. So that's one resource. If you want to do kind of the work on your own and go find them and spend the time doing the interview process and all of that, this is a great resource. So they have people posted. That resource has been really good for me. The other one is Chris Ducker's. Chris Ducker, he wrote the book Virtual Freedom. And if you ever just need, in fact, I would recommend people, if they're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or not confused, read the book Virtual Freedom by Chris Ducker. That will help you get a real clear picture of who you need to hire in your life and how to do it from, because he does the same thing. He's over in the Philippines. He actually lives there. He's from England and now lives in the Philippines full time and has been doing work over there for a long time, and he's the expert. He's a pretty cool guy. But he has an online source called Virtual Staff Finder, I think is what it is. Yeah, so Virtual Staff Finder, and I've done that too. Now that's more of a $300 or $400 fee, but they will find 3 or 4 candidates. I think it's 3 candidates for you, and then kind of go through your thing. But what I found was when I did that, in fact, the gal I'm working with now came through there, and she's awesome. But I found that it still was on me to go, it didn't eliminate my responsibility to sit and get to know them. It just kind of cut through some of the searching. Yes. And then they narrowed it down to 3. So you know how it is. We have too many options. You get overwhelmed. Right. And so if you want to cut down the overwhelm, but you still kind of want to go the Filipino route, then his company, Virtual Staff Finder, is a way to go. And those 2 that I have the most. Once I get to know my VAs, the other option is you ask your VAs who else they know. And I've had great luck just once I have a relationship, having them bring in people for different tasks, or they have friends or their sister or everyone in their house is working for you. I've done that too, where I've just employed a whole house, and it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then you're totally blessing that family in a way that you just never thought you could. So that becomes kind of a cool thing as well. So.
Yes. Now, you said so many things. First of all, I wrote them all down. So they will be in the resources list for you and I'll linked up. But I learned about the Craigslist Philippines from the Speak It Forward conference that you presented at. And you were like, I don't even know if this works, but I went home and did it. And I did find an assistant that way. Yes.
Okay. So it does work
so
still.
It still
that's
does
cheap,
work.
and that's free, right? At some point, I thought someone had said they'd close it down. I hadn't gone back because it just, for whatever reason, but.
No, it still definitely works. So, and you do get a variety and a range of people there. So I knew, being someone that was so just already couldn't stand what I did for my work and was really hustling to build something so I can get out as fast as possible. I was like, I think when I contacted you, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you for this service because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I started immediately. I was like, I know I need to delegate. I just know I need to get this stuff off of my plate as soon as possible. And I'll just learn as I go. And so I have some lessons that I remember even like shooting you a couple emails and I'm like, hey, can you help me with this? So I'd like to share for a moment some of my lessons and then kind of ask you some of those questions. First, I used you and I highly recommend you. And I forgot we said if you're transitioning out, you're not doing those services anymore, right?
Let's
be careful.
Well, we could put a hyphen there. Like, you know how it is as entrepreneurs. You're never quite sure if you're giving up, but a lot of my focus is going to be, well, let's say it this way. I know to scale and help more people, I need to expand beyond just the monthly services. But what I have been doing, and I'm sure if people contact me, I definitely can either point them in the right direction or help them. We had the social media machine where for a monthly fee, we do the same thing and just take care of your social media. Or if you have help we have blog prep. And so for a monthly fee every week, we're making sure that you have blog content and that it's posted, and same thing with social media. And you can buy one or the other or both of them together. And so that's the service we've been offering. And again, like you said, the reason I was able to build a whole business with that is because it did answer the need. Like, please just take care of this. I don't want to find my own VA. And so that's the space I've been in. And it actually has been very profitable and very good. And so let's not shut the door on that totally. I'll just say I am moving towards some of these other resources that can kind of teach people how to fish, so to speak. But if people want to get a hold of me and find out more and see, what things are available, I'll definitely be open to talking to them for sure.
Okay. So either way, you want to connect with Matthew anyway. Yeah. But I did use the blog prep. And then as my needs expanded, so I had the blog prep services, and then I needed someone for like just 3 hours a week to do, I don't even know. I mean, Wednesdays were my favorite day because I had, her name is Crystal. I had Crystal for 3 hours and it was like the best day. I'm like, oh, what a relief to have her even create a spreadsheet of links. Like, just, to put in a blog or something like that. It was so simple. Or can you research this topic or research that topic? I remember having her book. I was going to go to a conference and I needed her to, can you look up car rentals, airline tickets, something like that. And it was amazing. I was like, oh, so good. And then, so then I needed to expand because she was fantastic for that immediate need, but then I needed something a little bit more. So I needed someone that was pretty well versed in WordPress, that had general virtual assistant skills and things like that I eventually got up to, I needed someone 20 hours a week. And I did I went on to Craigslist and did that, or Elance and Odesk and like these other services, and had some interesting, you had some fantastic experiences, some not so great at all.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and I went through Virtual Staff Finder because that was when I was like, I can't, because that was when I like was burning through like 4 assistants in 2 weeks because like no one was reliable. I'm like, okay. So I went through them. And great to get that off my plate. Totally worth it to me because, again, I was like, I just don't have time. I'm going to trust that Chris Ducker is going to stand behind his brand and his name and give me top-notch people. And my assistant was fantastic. So great. But there were so many power outages in his zone or village that he wasn't able to do the job. And so I wasn't me because he was so great. I was like willing to just pay for him to commute to the village, to an internet cafe. I was like, I did not want to lose him because he was so great, but it was just too much on him. And he's like, I just can't, I'm sorry. And I mean, that was the professionalism. I can't deliver. I feel bad. Like I'm late on these deadlines and it's just a lot. It's like over 100 degrees. So now I have to start again. So those were the things I noticed was like, what, and that was when I was like, help me, Matthew.
Yeah.
Like, what is it when you're going to try to hire on your own?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things to look for? What are the things to ask? How do you know if they're going to be quality? Because you need to save yourself time too. And then there was also just a whole different cultural thing that I had to learn as well and respect. So, I mean, the whole journey, I can't tell every ounce of my story, but it's been a journey. Let's just say that.
Several thoughts I have. Your experience has been my experience as well, as far as, it is a different thing. Maybe when I started, I had zero money, extra money, at least I thought, and I couldn't justify like, hey, honey, I want to hire someone overseas and on top of all our just, and, so that whole thing was weird. And it was like, I've never done this. I don't even really have a business yet. This was a few years back. I just kind of was intrigued by the whole thing. And so for me, I knew though that I needed to learn how to delegate. And so there was kind of the spectrum. Like, I think if you really specifically know what you need to do, like if you're very clear on what you need to do and you've got the cash, or at least you're really close and you just think like, oh, I shouldn't pay someone $10 or $15 an hour, States, that's just too expensive. How can I justify that? If you're at that point, you really can hand something, like if someone can hire me to just take care of it for them and you're going to pay me, like even more than that to be your VA, what I can do in a few hours, and because I'm not living on an island where there's typhoons, there is something good and wonderful about that. And I do know a lot of guys who will end up transitioning in that way where it's just, it's just easier for me. It's quicker, the language barrier. And so there is something nice if you have the money and the resources to have a stateside VA and they just get everything taken care of for you. And it's quicker. They understand the nuances of, like you said, with the language and all that kind of stuff. So that isn't a negative thing. And I would encourage anyone, if they can do that, to connect with this VA in the States. Just a lot of things, you can cut through a lot of stuff, and that just might make sense for a lot of people. Just put the money down, go through these services, and just hire a VA and be done with it. Shut up and do it. You can go for it. But I know there's a lot of us that we're still not there. Even if there's these goofy things and these difficulties, I think it's worth the wrestling through all those to end up working with someone overseas. And I found that there's a lot of these residual benefits that come along with it, just when you're willing to kind of take that risk. But now, of course, a lot of us, like you're saying, Stephanie, we're doing this out of chaos and out of overwhelm. And so we always want everything to work out perfectly the second we want to hire someone. But that goes kind of to the whole delegation thing, is if we don't learn how to like almost drop a nuclear bomb on how we're trying to do things right now, if we don't stop and slow down and back up a little bit and kind of put some things in place, we're always going to be in the same place of chaos, And so what I did, and this to me is like the ultimate, if someone can do this, I think it's really cool. I ended up, that gal that I had at the beginning, is I went back to her and said, I'd love to have you more, but I can't afford. At that time, I couldn't even afford $4 an hour. I said, I'd love to have you. What would be fair to you? And I asked her. And so she went like half of that and said, yeah, I'll $2 an hour and I'll work, more hours. So I was able to get her for more because she appreciated the idea of having someone kind of take care of most of her salary and to be able to be there like 20 hours. And then eventually I had her full time salaried. And that was a whole different experience than trying to find someone to do this task over on eDesk or Olance, or what, I think I'm screwing those up, but eDesk, it's Odesk and Elance.
I think, yeah, there you go.
But, it is different finding one-off things versus building a relationship with someone, actually having someone come alongside of you and end up partnering with you. And I would encourage people, and it's not for everybody, but I think it could be for everybody, but I just know we all have different personalities and different things we can handle. But to me, doing that changed everything. When I was able to bring her on full time, like just salaried, she did everything for me. All of a sudden, it changed the dynamics. And I just decided I'm not going to care about what hours she clocks or doesn't clock. I'm bringing her on. I've already built a trust rapport with her. I want her to be excited about this business as much as I am. And so I want her just to go with it and have space and freedom to kind of be a mini me in a sense of where she is also excited about the success of our business. She doesn't have to go get 4 other jobs. She doesn't have to find another person to work for. And at this time, my business is growing, and so I'm able to like afford her. But I even was bringing her on before I could really afford her, just because I knew it would change the dynamics. And that was a totally different experience than just kind of finding people one-off. And even since then, found people here and there for different things, and I've gotten better at that. But always having someone like salaried on my staff, so to speak, as part of my team overseas has been huge, because what happens is I can share vision with my VA, and they can actually come up with task ideas. I can send my VA to training. Like if Amy Porterfield has something, my VA can go to that. And I say, hey, go learn how to do that for me or whatever. A lot of things. Because then out of that, especially if it's a person who's like, like a detail-oriented person or whatever, they start eating that stuff up. And now you've freed them because of where they are in the world, and having a nice job with a nice person who's not asking them to do weird things or, like spam everybody or whatever. Like if you're just asking them to actually share value with the people that, you're building a tribe that you believe in and you're trying to encourage them. So when you bring people on staff with you and you bring someone on to kind of partner with you in that personal assistant or general VA role, and you're able to give them more time and more money and they're able to work with you, there's this really cool relationship that happens. You start pouring into their life, you become friends, and I know not everyone wants to be friends with their VA, so to speak, but if you can take the time and find someone that you can connect with, all those kind of things start happening. And so when we had power outages and stuff, when I have like my team, they're full time. Now, obviously we have deadlines and things, but you know what I start doing when I'm working with someone overseas? I change my deadline structure. So we do a lot more prep and setup so that we're not doing things just in time. We're kind of loading things up. So if we're going to do social media, let's load up social media for a whole month so that we always have stuff in the bank, so to speak. And if we're doing blog prep, we're doing a lot of things that I always want to get to, but I never can. So if a storm comes or power goes out or it's hit and miss, or there is a season with bad weather and that happens over there, then it's not a panic. Like if I don't hear from my VA for 3 days in a really bad storm season, I get worried that they're okay, but my business doesn't have to shut down, so to speak. And so there is a role and there's a place where that overseas Filipino VA can fit really well. And if you can learn how to do that really well, it can be just pretty awesome. And then there are the other kinds of VAs in that real-time VA that you need like every day. And so sometimes the Philippines can work for that. Sometimes it can't, as you discovered. But if you kind of put the right VA from the right place, doing the right kind of things and supporting you in the right way, you can get that groove on and really fly. So I've always recommended if you can go like at least 15 to 20 hours a week with someone, or you can go to even 40 hours and you can find someone and you start building that relationship with them, it does change the dynamics a little bit, but it doesn't solve weather, and there is a bureaucracy over in the Philippines that when they need to do something or get their internet connection, it can be stupid over there. And so you do have to realize that is a reality. But it's not like backwoods. A lot of U.S. companies have gone over there and built a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of cool things they're doing, and their economy is built on a lot of outsourcing. So it is important to them. And so, you do kind of learn which regions, and I can't think of them now, but, finding out like, okay, how is your internet connection, and how's it working, and all those kind of things.
How many brownouts? Yeah, how many? Yeah, and just how many hours?
Yeah, and so you do
the communication up front.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then you do learn. Sometimes there is that someone you find, and it's not going to work because their connection just isn't, and they can't control that, you can't, and it's a bummer. Like, oh man, like, are you thinking about moving to Manila? Like, how much would it cost to move? You start thinking that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was like. What do I need to do to keep you?
Yeah. What do you need to keep this going well?
I know. I wanted to send a generator over there.
I was like ready to. I've actually bought a guy a generator before just because of or at least like, hey, what would it take to fix your generator? And so now I don't recommend doing that right away, but when you do build a relationship, that's kind of the thing too, because you're kind of investing. But here's just a side note. If you ever get some, if you have a VA overseas and you ever, and probably works in any culture just because of the dynamics and how culture and things work, and you don't want to embarrass people and you want to treat them with respect. Anytime I've bought something, because I've bought computers for people, I've, paid bills or whatever when it was appropriate, I make sure and clarify this is not part of your pay. This is me investing in my business. And if you leave and you have to go to another job tomorrow, the computer's yours. So you do that like Dave Ramsey talks about. If you're going to give something, give it. Don't make it part of the salary. I mean, I guess you can negotiate however you need to do, but I'm always careful that whatever I do, I don't want them to be like indebted or burdened to me. I want to treat people with the kind of respect that I want to be treated with. And so if I've ever done that, I've been really clear, like, you're still getting your pay. Or, sometimes they've worked it out and they want to pay it off or do something. And so I've been real careful with that, but just that came up. I have done that. And so I've been real careful to make sure it doesn't get confusing or that someone doesn't end up owing me, especially at the rates that we're talking about, where what we think is $60 isn't that big of a deal. That could be a huge burden for someone. Yes. Or even, $500 to buy a computer. They could be waiting forever to buy that. And you say, it's worth it to me to keep you going. So what do we need to do? But then that's yours, because you can't go reclaim it anyways, so.
Yeah, and there are also services out there where, because of the outsourcing, like, they have generators.
Yeah.
Like, they have generators or maybe higher speed, more reliable internet. So, like, there are services like that too that I have used and currently have somebody. And the relationship part is like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
When you really just... And my type of personality is, when I get in work mode, I spike up to a high D.
Yeah.
So I'm like, task, we got to get this done. And, and my assistant, I've never gave her a personality profile, but just from her name is Leanne, and what I picked up from her is, I'm pretty sure she's like an S.
Yeah.
So she's so incredibly loyal and so just steady and reliable and I picked up on family oriented. Yes. And so the relationship part is really, really important there. So I was like, you know what? Okay. I don't want to be a taskmaster, I just got to slow down, because I'm a taskmaster to myself.
Yeah, and you do need to decide that, because we're talking we're talking relational and building these things. And if that's like you're hearing that on the other end of this, recording, and you're like, oh God, I do not want anything to do with that, then realistically, that might not be a good fit for you. You may be better off. And I don't know other cultures. I just know I've worked with the Philippines, and it's very... it's an island. It's like Hawaiian. Yeah, how's everybody doing? And you're real relaxed. It's friendly. And not obviously there's all personality types over there, but I found do need to put on that cultural awareness and realize, like, if you want to bark out orders and you don't want to be friends with anybody and you just need someone to do something, then maybe the stateside VA may be a better bet, because you're just going to get frustrated. I don't know. You definitely have to kind of like assume the best of people. And I have a friend who's got a VA overseas, and it's newer to him, and he'll email me like, they just said they had a power outage. Is that legit? I'm like, yes, true? It is. It's probably very true. And so, there are I don't want it to sound like every day like there's a power outage, but it will feel like that sometimes when there really is. And you can check the weather. You'll see that there's like a typhoon coming. And, those are real experiences and can be scary things. It can literally be concern, people, so they're in areas. So be prepared to, it is a different experience. That's that other side of outsourcing. We're talking about all the things you can get done, but these are people, and you're building a relationship with someone. And so I think in the gamut, there are different ways. Like if you just need a job done, we all know about the different resources out there. If you're just looking for someone to do social media, you find someone like me or services where someone's just doing that. I may employ or work with the VA, so you don't have to worry about that. And so that's what I had been offering and doing that kind of thing. And then, of course, so maybe what we could say is letting people know, like, if you're going to go down that road, you're thinking like, sweet, $2, $3, $4, $5, even $5 or $6 an hour. Like, that sounds really good to me. I like that. Just know that it's not an equal, exchange in the sense of like, it's not just getting a cheaper VA experience that you'd have here in the States. You do there's a lot of different things that come along with that smaller hourly amount, and you have to be prepared to kind of work with that. But for a lot of us, that's worth it, because it's like, man, I really don't have the money. And you know what? I don't mind building that relationship. But you know what? And I'll put up with stuff, because I know at the end of the day, or at the end of the month, or at the end of the year, I've had someone doing a bunch of stuff for me that I just couldn't get to. And I've made an impact in someone's life overseas. I mean, a lot of us, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian or whatever, like I know in the church world, we're all big on like sponsoring families overseas. I know like a lot of those, feed children and everything. And so we love the idea that like our US dollars can make a big impact. Well, to me, this almost kind of like fills that not only work, because I want to do work that matters. You and I both follow Dan Miller, and he talks about your work needs to have meaning. You want to work where you're passionate, because that just makes life better. And so not only is my work for my clients meaningful, but actually the team that I employ, that work, like my own team, that's doing impact in people's lives overseas. So for me, I have all these kind of like other things that go along with just this outsourcing thing, other than like, man, I need someone to do social media for me, and I only want to pay $1. Like it goes way beyond that, because I know that my dollars can make a bigger impact over there. And so when I'm employing someone, I'm engaging with someone, I'm getting into their life, we're talking about what's going on, if they have struggles, like it becomes this relationship. For me, that's important. I know that's not for everybody. Some people don't like people, and that's okay. Sometimes I don't either. But if we're in the service industry, which I guess all of us should be on some level, right? You do build these relationships, and and there's tons of pitfalls you need to avoid, and there's lots of things. And I don't know if we've there's so many questions that people have specifically. I know that. So I don't know, maybe the tone of this is like,
we don't even have time to go over all of it. We might have to have you come back.
I would be happy
to
do that. In fact, I wrote a couple blog posts on holyoatmeal.com knowing that you and I were going to talk, so people I kind of explore some of that. And maybe we got way too philosophical, so maybe we do need to have a follow-up, like answering different questions or something.
Like, wait a minute.
But
it's still really valuable, though.
And maybe they need to hear that, like, it is cool, but they understand all sides of it.
Notice that, it's like basically, okay, so delegating is huge. You need to do it. It's a time saver, but also realize there's a learning curve. Yeah. There's things you're going to have to adjust. Yeah. It's not going to be like this. I mean, it's a huge, huge help, but realize that it's not like this miracle of everything's perfect kind of thing.
And I think there are some great services out there. Was it WP Curve? Have you heard of that one?
No.
Okay, WP Curves. This, for anyone who just needs some help with the WordPress and doesn't want to deal with any of all this beautiful stuff we just laid out. That's
I just want a WordPress blog, people.
If you just want to have something help, WPCurve.com, like WordPress curve. If you're on WordPress and you just want WordPress help, I think it's $75 a month. Kind of think of it as a VA who's helping with all WordPress issues. So if you kind of want a WordPress support team, WP Curve is a really, really cool, powerful. So you can kind of get the help and a lower cost monthly for help with your WordPress, but you don't deal with all the stuff we talked about. They have a whole service that does it for you. And so that I would recommend. So if you're just looking for quick help, cool.
Yeah,
so,
like a one and done.
Yeah. And there's a lot of services that and they're getting better and better. So there's things like, my social media machine and blog prep services, that kind of fills that need. Like, I don't want to deal with it. And so I guess for whoever's out there listening, there are a few of us, and I would just go to bat to say, if you can find that person overseas that you kind of end up building a relationship with, like a longer term relationship, it's so worth the hassle of finding them and working with them even through the storms and stuff, because there's just something there. And I would say that becomes one piece of your team down the road. One VA doesn't do everything. That's what Chris Ducker teaches. Like one VA is
no super VA,
no super VA, and no super entrepreneur. So stop that.
Right.
But you can have that personal assist. I always kind of think of it like those, when you see the movie stars and they have their entourage, they have like that personal assistant who comes alongside them. So if I can find that personal assistant role, and that's someone who I've employed for as many hours as I possibly can afford. If I go overseas to the Philippines, I know I can do that a lot sooner in my life with the finances I might have available, and I can build that relationship with them. They can kind of be let loose to do all sorts of things. And then if you find these solutions like WP Curve for like more of the systematic stuff, that can be part of your team that you build at the end of it. Because all these guys that we follow, like Michael Hyatt and, your buddy John Lee Dumas, they have teams of people, right?
Oh, my goodness. Yes, they do.
All these guys. And so if you're going to start building your team, one of the places that you could start at an affordable rate is find that GVA, that general VA from the Philippines is my recommendation, and start that relationship. But don't be all bent out of shape if you don't know what to do. I would say, like I didn't even know what I wanted them to do. I just said, I know I need, because we didn't even really get into this, but I just need to learn how to delegate. And I need to learn how to let someone come alongside of me. And I would say it's worth the money and the hassle just so you start, because if they're available and you just kind of let go of the idea, like, you know what, they didn't do anything for me this week and I still paid them, good. It's worth it, because you're starting to think differently, and you need to think differently to succeed in these entrepreneurial schemes that we have. So
yes, and think of the skill set. For me, I was like, okay, this is a learning curve, because like I am very serious about growing my business, and like I realized I wanted more of that relationship, someone to really care about my message and work with me and build it, and just like get really excited about the growth and take initiative and things like that. And you really only get that when you take the time to get to know them. I mean, in addition, but the skill sets you learn, leadership skills, learning how to be a more effective communicator, learning how to work with different personalities and different styles. I mean, like just learning to delegate, like do that alone is so worth it in your transferable skills.
And the E-Myth book, he talks about learning, we build businesses not just to give ourselves a job. We're building a business to build a different kind of lifestyle. And so you need to start thinking not like the technician, like the owner, having someone there. In fact, I think if you buy more time than you think you need, that it's kind of a healthy pressure, because you're thinking, should I be doing this or should I give this to Joseph? Should I do this or should I give this to Cherry, whoever? And so I'm always thinking, should I be doing this? And now I have someone on retainer for 40, 20, 40 hours, whatever it might be, depending who the team member is. Then it forces me to start like, because it might take a few months for you to realize, like, okay, I need to stop doing this. If you only hire people when you need them, and like you do the Elance thing, you won't take the time to come up with the punch list. If you have someone on staff, quote unquote, that's on retainer for you, and you have 20 hours available to you, you start thinking, you kind of, first you don't do it because it is a skill that you have to develop, but when they're there all the time and they're, hey, how's it going? Anything you need from me today? And you're like, no, not right now. But all of a sudden that you walk away from that Skype conversation, you're like, maybe I should come up with something. At that time, like I said before, I might just have them go through a course for me, or I might say, hey, go to lynda.com and learn how to do something better. And then
I know that the training, like I don't have time to learn this. I don't, like you go, can you search YouTube or go on Lynda and like go participate in this, write an outline, tell me what you did.
And if they leave, then you still have that resource, and you've learned, like if they leave and maybe they take all their knowledge with them, you've learned how to delegate a little bit better. And that's worth it too, because in a year from now, you and I are both going to be even better at delegating, and we'll have learned even more things, but we won't have learned that if we don't get muddy and messy in the world of outsourcing and delegating.
Yes, I know. Despite the challenges, the bottom line is like, it's just helped me tremendously. And now everything I do, I think the first question I ask is, should I be doing this right now? And I'm like, I got no business doing this. Yeah. Like, let's just throw that off my plate in the middle of the afternoon time.
When I'm watching a movie because I snuck away and I said, should I be doing this right now? But that's a different thing. So.
Yeah. So, and the beautiful thing with me, like initially, there's a learning curve. It does take time to like really train and get someone up to speed, and even get you used to learning how to delegate and how to work with the team. And everybody has different styles, different paces. And like one of the things though is, like the E-Myth book says, is I'm trying to build up a business to the point where if I leave or if I go on vacation, can my business still run and make money?
My question is, if I get hit by the proverbial bus, there's a bus out there with my name on it and it's after me, I can hear it. And so I got to say, when that bus comes, I need to be able to have business run, so.
Yeah. So that's my goal. And I was like, that's what I mean by like, I'm working towards building a serious, business where if I am out of the picture, it's still running. Yeah. And so in order to do that, you better learn how to delegate and work with a team.
Yeah, here's some great advice that can go for when you're ready to hire your VA, and you should be ready to hire your VA now, so start learning how to do that, whether you even think you're going to hire them in a while. In fact, that'll work even better in your favor, is read EntreLeadership book by Dave Ramsey and go to his hiring chapter. The same hiring process he goes through, that applies whether you're building a business with guys locally, you're hiring actual employees, or you're outsourcing to someone in the Philippines. Follow his protocols. That's a great way to learn how to, because delegating is also learning how to hire well too, and so if you just open that book and said, okay, let's just do the Dave way, and that would be an incredible way to find your VA. Then you're not in that, making, because a lot of it's just stupid hiring mistakes. I hired a guy once. He called me back and he had these ideas for the business and he's talking really weird, he's sounding real lovey-dovey, and I'm like, are you drunk? And he was drunk. God. And he did like a drunk Skype call with me and was telling me how we should do, we should offer, what was it, like telemarketing. And I said, you know what? I think we're through. And he's like, what? No, man, I've just had a few. And so, like anything, there are going to be goofballs, and that's on me for panicking.
Not taking the time.
So
right?
I would say take the time, and if you don't have the time, you'll learn on the job. And so, you be smart. Don't give them every essential detail of your life, and you can test people out with little things. And so, obviously there's a lot of tips, but Virtual Freedom, read that book.
You'll seriously have to go back. Yeah. Well, we might have to do a whole series.
I would be up for, or help you put together the VA to Z. We'll talk about all of those things. So, for sure. All right. So.
Yeah. Okay. We've been chatting for over an hour. So.
Something free to talk. So.
Yeah. Well, it was just so great. This has been really valuable, and we could just talk so much about delegating and all the benefits and things to start. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share all of us, share with us your expertise and knowledge. And it has been a pleasure to have you.
Stephanie, it's been my pleasure to be here for sure. If you can find that person overseas that you kind of end up building a relationship with, like a longer term relationship, it's so worth the hassle of finding them and working with them even through the storms and stuff.
So there you have it. That was Matthew Casteel over at holyoatmeal.com. We could have talked on and on about this, the importance of delegating, how you need to outsource, where your first steps are, how to find help, where to begin, and really how to offload what's on your plate. It is responsible to delegate. It's not good to try to do it on your own. Just like Moses was told by his father-in-law that what he was doing was not good. Not that the work he was doing wasn't good. It was him trying to do it all on his own was not good. So Matthew Casteel is a great connection. I hope you found value in this. Some practical strategies and steps to start taking today to start outsourcing and delegating. So I will talk to you all next week. Make sure to stop on by to movedbypurpose.net to say hello and say hello to Matthew as well.